time to check in with State Representative Tacky Chan of Quincy for one of our Tacky Talk podcasts. How are you doing, Tacky?
Doing good today, Joe. Happy October 19, and it's a sunny day before we have a rainy weekend.
Yeah, of course. What else would it be? I thought you might have a little preview of your Halloween costume for us today.
I do not. Actually, I'm not a huge Halloween fan personally, to be honest with you, but that's, well, also is just what it is. I just never been a Halloween guy. But that being said, neighborhoods changed again. I can't speak to other folks, but there are less trick-or-treaters again the last couple of years as kids grow up and move to college or whatever, and waiting for young kids to get old enough to go out to trick-or-treat.
I know I've noticed that too in my house. Not nearly as popular as it used to be. So it's one of the vestiges of childhood that we'll always remember, I guess.
Well, I did trick-or-treat as a young child, but I kind of outgrew it very quickly at a young age. And I did watch The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown as a child, and that kind of stuff. And just reminder, Halloween safety. I'm sure the Quincy Police Department remind folks, it's a different world we're living in, and you definitely should check, the candies they received from your children, and also probably should confiscate and ration them, given the amount of sugar that's involved.
Yeah. So actually, also this time of year, a good reminder because the sun's setting earlier and earlier. Safety for pedestrians and bicyclists out there too. So be aware of that.
Yeah, twilight's setting really quick, and we kind of joked a bit about the weather, but the weather doesn't help, right? I mean, it's getting cloudier, darker sooner, especially these kind of dreary weekends we've been having. I mean, I'm hearing more cancellations or moving around of events on weekends. And, given the fact the sun sets earlier plus darker skies, you got to keep an eye out for pedestrians and bikers out there. And Quincy bike lanes are a little disconnected in the sense that not all the various lanes are connected. So drivers, if you're not from Quincy, drivers can be a little confused about the fact that there's a lane here, there's not a lane here. It's actually very difficult to do a whole configuration of one sweep. And the city's been implementing it a little bit at a time here and there as they do new construction. And that's the best they can do at this moment. But, as the city continues, I suspect, to be more connecting lanes as they move along. Locals, I think, understand where they are. Maybe out of towners, I think it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there have been two recent bicycle fatalities in Quincy, so it's a real concern for sure.
No, absolutely, and obviously, bike safety is very important to all of us. Wear a helmet. Definitely get some basic understanding of how to bike. Go with traffic. Know the basic hand signals. They still require these hand signals for driving test. That hasn't changed. Actually, did go my nephew on his driving test about 2-3 years back, and they required to learn how to do the hand signal still. So drivers have to be cautious what's out on the road. And Quincy is a very, very busy traffic city. I don't have to tell anybody else that. It's one of the biggest complaints I get when I talk to constituents. But hopefully at the same time, slower traffic means safer bicycles. Hopefully.
Yeah, so just to put a little plug in for the nonprofit group here in Quincy, Quinn Cycles. They do a great job promoting bike safety, and they even offer classes for a very minimal fee.
Yeah, I strongly encourage people who are regular bikers to definitely get a refresher course. I think I'm not the only one that will say this, but we've encountered bicyclists who, how do I put this, act like they're cars.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you're not in a car. So if you haven't had a bicycle lesson refresh regarding roads of the road, Quinn Cycles is a great place to reach out to and definitely get a refresher. You're right; it's not very expensive to do, and it's safety not just for the driver but also yourself. And you can't just always assume that the car is in the wrong.
Right, exactly. So I remember last week we didn't have a whole lot to talk about, but that has changed significantly over the past week, Tacky, at Beacon Hill.
Give it a few days, and the wind will change. Right, this is New England. Just wait for the afternoon. We get a different weather from the morning.
That's right. I guess most notably is the discussion about the changes in the gun laws in Massachusetts.
Yeah, for context, folks. I mean, I've been around a few years, and this is how I know you've been around too long. Is when this is actually technically your fourth debate that you've been around for. So as I remind my colleagues at the state, especially the newer ones, who are now taking their first real hard votes. I was around for the 97, 96, 97, 98 debates. There was a failed gun bill in 97, and in 98 is when we got, new assault weapons ban and other clarifications. And then, 15, 16, we had the DeLeo did a massive other reform that did things like simplify your FID cards to actually fit in your wallet, better tracing or tracking historical records of private firearm sales among private people. The state system was rather disjointed and actually not helpful. And we wanted to streamline that because it made sense. I mean, no gun owner wants to find out there's a break in chain of historical record on a firearm sale in case something goes wrong with their firearm, right? So we do a lot of that stuff. Now, there's been a lot of challenges explaining what's going on because the bills are very long at 122 pages because they decided to consolidate all the various sections that scatter throughout the general laws into one chapter. So Chairman Day, who chairs the Judiciary Committee, took the Herculean task of consolidating a whole lot of different laws and put them in the same place, so it's actually changing the verbiage other than correct citing of other sections, which isn't very easy. I've done this myself, when I staffed many years ago, when you're looking at, 2 or 3 different areas of general laws and trying to bring them into a consolidated format where that we can find everything in one place. The big key takeaways this one is regarding ghost guns, making guns at home, especially with 3D printers with no serial numbers and no traceability. We don't want that. We continue to allow government buildings and sensitive areas to not allow firearms in, except for on-duty and now off-duty police officers. And private homeowners now have the ability to say no to guns on their private property. We've always felt they most likely did, but we're just reinforcing the fact that, as a private homeowner, you should be able to choose who is allowed to bring what to your home. So if you don't like the idea of your friend bringing the blowtorch, you should have the same right to say you shouldn't bring your rifle. And also, we've alone private buildings. Currently, private buildings can restrict access to folks regarding things that are considered reasonable. So, no shoes, no service, right? No shirt, no service kind of thing. So they can post, if they so desire, not to have firearms on premises. They don't have to. They can choose to. And again, it is private property, and they can do that if it's done reasonably in terms of notification. So other stuff, we codify some stuff that's already been done. For example, in 2016, the assault weapons definition was expanded by Attorney General to have facsimiles of the same weapon. So even though it may not have the same name, if it's a sufficient facsimile of the assault weapon, then it is an assault weapon that's listed in the law that's been banned since 1998. So we codify some of those things and update some of the training issues with the state police to have them oversee some of the police training stuff. I'm sorry, not police training, the firearm training components. And other than that, there's not a lot of major changes. You're an owner of a firearm. You do not have to go through training again. You do not have to get relicensed. You do not have to surrender any of your weapons. There is no retroactivity. It's all prospective. So it will impact perhaps some firearm sales, but a lot of stuff that has been prohibited from sale has been prohibited since 2016 and 1998.
Yeah, I guess one of the areas of confusion, that, according to things that I've read, is the status of off-duty but active police officers and what they can do with their service weapons, right?
Yeah, we cleaned it up yesterday as part of a budget amendment filed by our friend Mark Cusack from Braintree regarding this issue. He's been working pretty hard on it for the last week, trying to get some greater clarity. The police chief's primary and only real issue is that one you just described. And we clarified that off-duty police officers are able to carry firearm, in these sensitive areas. That was the real question mark. I don't anticipate many police officers carry their service weapon or their private weapon into an elementary school. I'd be very surprised to hear that. But I mean, I can see circumstances where you suddenly called on duty, you were off duty, you're coming off duty, but you're still in the property, but you haven't got off the property yet. I can see some little, technicalities. So, we addressed that as a budget amendment yesterday, thanks to the work of Mark Cusack from Braintree. And hopefully they'll put that issue to the rest of the police chiefs. Otherwise, the police chiefs really have nothing else to say. That's the only thing of detail they talked about that was a problem with them.
Yep. Passed overwhelmingly, but not unanimously, right?
No, it's these kind of votes, like many of I consider hard votes, depending on the ask regarding taxes and social issues and firearms and even the budget, depending on where you're on different parts of the political spectrum, both sides. Ends up being a little bit of a mixed vote, and it's a vote largely driven by geography. Urban areas have very different voting patterns than rural areas, which is very different from suburban areas, which is very different from industrial areas versus agricultural areas. The Massachusetts legislature is not different from many places where the geography you come from actually dictate your voting record. And we've talked about this a lot here, right? I mean, the party is not a monolith. All of us have different constituencies, and all of us are aware of what's going on the best we can of what's going on at home. Like, we're not omniscient about what's happening at home, but
right.
We're going to have some clue about what's happening. And
you're supposed to represent your constituents, right? So yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of how it is. And yeah, we talk about votes where, I don't have an interest in something, but it's important to somebody else. And I vote yes because does farm aid affect me directly? No. Does it indirectly? Most likely through farmers markets. But does it have a huge economic impact in my district? The answer is definitely not. But, farm aid is very important to another rep and senator, more agricultural area where, this assistance during the floods we had this summer will make a massive difference in, maintaining their local economy.
Right. Yep. And that's why it's called a commonwealth, right?
It is one of 4 commonwealths of Massachusetts. I mean, 4 commonwealths of America. It's actually a title in the Constitution.
Exactly. So now it's on to the Senate to wait for their version. Is that right?
Yeah, we're not sure what's going on. We've heard that the Majority Leader, Senator Cream from Newton, is in charge of consolidating information from the various senators regarding a proposal to put in the Senate. I've heard already from constituents and pundits there was no public hearing in the House, and this deadlock issue with the House and Senate regarding rules has bled over into getting bills omitted. If anyone's talked to me knows my consternation about this issue, and obviously I'm among all the members who want to have House and Senate leadership to just kind of figure this out, please. And the rest of us can kind of move on trying to get our stuff done. So another thing is I don't want to get involved because it's House and Senate leadership, and I'm not getting in the middle of that. I got my own work to do. So, we did have a public hearing in a very unusual way. We did that through House Ways and Means. Not unusual in the sense that they do have hearing, but very rare, but not unusual. And we use the process through a supplemental budget to attach, or actually what we call release in part. So we took an existing supplemental budget, took a chunk off the back of it, rewrote it, and then released it from there using the original template from the original bill filed by Rep. Chairman Day, and then went forward from that point and had a public hearing on the new version that's being proposed. So it became a very confusing, non-conventional method in the sense that it didn't go through the joint committee process. But standing committees can have hearings. Oh, I got to back up. A standing committee in our world, in the State House, is a committee that does not have a counterpart in the Senate that makes it a joint committee. So me being a joint committee chair all the time, meaning that my chairmanship requires the Senate to have a co-chair. And for us to do anything requires cooperation and working together with a Senate counterpart and convince Senate members with House members to move a bill forward or stop a bill or change a bill or whatever we try to do in a committee. Standing committees don't have that. They don't have a requirement to be part of an other committee on the other side. There's no Senate counterpart on Ways and Means, for example. Ways and Means is a standing committee. So as a result of being a standing committee, they don't have what we call joint rules, which run the committee jointly between a senator chair and a House chair. Standing committee only has one chair, a Senate chair in the Senate, a House chair in the House. Mm-hmm. So as a result, the standing committee can make its own rules to operate on its own.
Okay, I see.
So for me to have committee rules requires my Senate chairman to agree to my committee rules.
Right.
If he wants to change it, we can talk about changes and we try to agree to the same thing. If you're a standing committee in the House, you don't need the Senate chair to agree.
Gotcha. Okay, you're an independent body, basically.
You're an independent body. So as you can tell, there's always a little bit of jealousy, as you could hear from.
Yeah. Well, I know this has been a priority for the speaker for quite a while, so I'm sure he wanted to get it done.
Yeah, and the House members are adamant. We're absolutely adamant about some kind of public hearing process where, in person, where people can see the committee, can come testify, can submit testimony and whatever documentations they want, and collect feedback from the members based on what we hear from our constituencies and and whatnot, that we can have conversations with the chairs and in the speaker's office, which, all of us, including myself, had weighed in at different points the last week about our opinions about one thing or another.
Mm-hmm.
So, it came out in the debate, essentially 10 days, well, 9-ish, sort of. I mean, it was a Wednesday vote. It was a Tuesday public hearing. So 8 days for the public hearing, essentially. And, it's not the first time we've moved bills this quickly.
Mm-hmm. So
I think people, can say at least we got in daylight. Now, how the Senate handles this, I can't speak to that. I don't know how they do this. All I tell you folks is that, police reform, we did have a public comment period when we did police reform. The Senate did not.
Okay, we'll leave that at that.
At that, we'll see how Senate leadership decides how to want to manage that.
Right. Okay. Oh, and by the way, at the same time, the governor decided it was a great idea to release a $4 billion housing bond bill.
Yep. Yeah. We were a little bit preoccupied yesterday, so clearly I've had a chance to catch up on my own news in the State House.
Right. Yeah.
But this was
different provisions in there, mostly for low and middle income households from the initial reading that I saw.
Yeah, this was anticipated in the sense we were expecting a housing bond bill. I didn't know what was going to be in it. I don't actually know what's it about yet. I have not a chance to review it. I don't need to talk about the housing crisis. Everyone knows about the housing crisis. Mortgage rates are approaching 8%. Home valuations on a national level has gone up 25% almost, despite mortgage rates because of housing shortage. Massachusetts had its first reduction of home sales since the 2008 financial crisis. And the last set of data, not because of house valuation, but because of supply.
Right. Yeah, because prices are still increasing.
And if you're sitting on your mortgage between 3 and 5%, you have no incentive to sell your home because the prices aren't going down and the mortgage rates have gone up.
That's right. Yeah.
And then rental market continues to be very tight. I think everybody that's listening knows that. It's market demand drives the price.
And, supply and demand, there's not a lot of supply. So there's going to be an increased demand, and that's going to drive prices higher. It's economics 101.
I agree. And that's kind of part of the challenge here with this. Obviously the increase of housing stock for moderate and low income folks is a big deal. We did tax package, increase the rental deduction. That will help out a little bit, and also we have dependents. Mm-hmm. Children and dependents, we increase those credits a little bit too. And of course, if we have a senior citizen that qualifies for the citizen circuit breaker, that helps out as well. But overall, the question is about housing stock. And, a lot of it's left to private development.
Right, exactly. Yeah. The public part of the bill that I read, it also includes incentives to refurbish the public housing that the state already has. Is like 43,000 units, and a lot of them need renovations, and a lot of them are still vacant.
Well, the kind of vacant, kind of not. It's very confusing. So,
Mm.
as I said over the years, representing state housing, because I have Germantown as part of the district,
Mhm.
just because units vacant doesn't mean the unit's habitable.
Ah, okay.
That's what I learned over the years. And this is kind of like a tricky thing in the press because they always love the good press hit. The question is why is it habitable as opposed to
Right.
why is vacant. So I give Jim Rathers some credit here, when he came into the housing authority, because one of the things that was when he audited actually the housing authority, worked for the state at the time. One of the
That's
things
right.
he audited is the conditions of the property in Germantown was the just basically no maintenance investment by all prior directors, it seems, for going back like 25 years. And complete mismanagement of the systems ranging from housing, heating,
Mhm.
all the way to roofs and floors. I mean, it was just complete, total neglect, including, I think some in the area of almost 50 units that were considered uninhabitable.
That sounds right. Yeah.
So, this is a big deal. And my understanding also is that all the units in Germantown are no longer all state run, I believe, if not almost all. There's very few federal ones. It was actually very quirky because Quincy is one of those places that had, for a long time, a federal and a state component on public
Mhm.
housing, which meant that you couldn't put state money in federal housing, could federal money in state housing. You're segregated, which made it much more difficult to manage when you think about it carefully, and also created problems for residents because residents see one unit getting something and the other one not,
Yep.
because they don't know the difference between a federal unit and a state unit.
Right. And they shouldn't have to. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, so, I mean, that's just the reality. So I believe they unified, if not all of the units into a state housing component. So, any additional funding we can get towards, public housing will help, ensure that we'll have 100% capacity, which also is a bad thing, by the way. And also, keep him up to code, so there's no safety issues. And that includes senior housing too, right?
Mhm.
Remember, it got blown off in O'Brien Towers down in Germantown.
Yeah.
It was just ripped right off, and obviously they're insured, and they got temporary, and they're pursuing recovery from the previous installer and all that. But I mean, a lot of that money started off on various grants and loans and whatnot that Jim Rathers was able to find and cobble together to make things happen. Same with the heating systems, and I mean they were using stuff from the day one of building construction that is just inefficient and antiquated. And he's done a
Yeah.
master job.
Yeah. He's definitely turned the whole system around for the better. Yeah.
Yeah, poor home infrastructure just leads to poor quality of life. So, listen, I got to dig into it a bit more, see what's going on. The housing market's wacky, as you just heard,
Mm.
and the question is, will private developers change their tune and how they develop? Because as their current loans are being consumed by completing construction, so will they seek new loans or other financing um, to build new construction? Because if you're getting a loan at 8%, it changes how you want to do your project.
Right.
But say you go to private market, not bank. Private market generally will ask a higher rate of return than interest rates because of risk levels. So you decide to go to a private investor, they might want to have 12%.
Exactly. Yeah. So it may discourage you from even starting a project, or if not, at least seriously downsizing it.
Absolutely. And then, all the construction materials and everything's not cheap either now. So,
Yeah.
Labor's expensive now. In a market-driven level, it's gone up by the market-driven level for labor. So all those factor in, which is not going to help affordability.
Right. Exactly. So it's a real challenge, and there's no easy fix, and it's going to be a while, I think.
Agreed. We're into our third administration regarding housing challenges. Both the Baker and the Deval Patrick administration believe the private sector development can develop our way out of this. Clearly not. So I don't know what their plan is. I do have some confidence in Ed Augustus, who's a former state senator that, oddly enough, worked down the hall from me back in the old days.
Ah.
Yeah, I know. It's one big wheel in my life. He was a very successful city manager in Worcester. Yeah, city, for those of us who never come from a place as a manager, some places have strong city councils and they hire a city manager,
Mhm.
much like in a small town, a town manager. And that's a thankless job to chew, in the sense that, the council, the whole council is now your boss. Think
Right.
about it for a second. And not just one, all of them. And you're not an elected official. So your authority is kind of constrained by the city charter in a different way. And but on the flip side, it's a contract. So,
You're guaranteed a job. Yeah.
they're a job for at least a specific time frame
Length
until
of
your
the contract,
contract's
right.
out. And they got to negotiate with a city council for your next continuation of contract. So, I know town government does this with board of selectmen, but they're like 3 or 5 board of selectmen, right? You get to a city, you could be upwards of 13,
Well,
plus.
look at Boston, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 13, 15, counselors, all, with the various issues. So, yeah, I think given his experience already in the state senate, he worked in Congress for Jim McGovern, and he, managed the second biggest city in New England, which is Worcester.
Mhm.
I think he's well equipped to try to attack the housing situation. I don't know if he has an answer or anything, but I have a lot of confidence in Ed's capacity to do stuff, as you can tell.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure. And you talk about labor. The unemployment rate is still very, very low.
It's very low. The initial jobless claims are higher, but not very high.
Right.
Continuing claims is steady, meaning it's not really going up. It's not really going down. It's just that when it's steady, means it's a rotation of
Mhm.
people constantly be able to find work and constantly coming on and getting work quickly. And a new job creation, was double than Wall Street expectations. Yeah, I don't know, folks. It's just it's going to continue. Wage growth has not spiked at 4%. It's come down below 1% on wage growth in most sectors. So the wage inflation still continues as part of overall inflation. Core CPI is higher than CPI. So core CPI was a 4.1 and CPI was a 3.9. So core CPI is the price of everything minus food and energy. You take a food and energy, it's actually higher than if you had food and energy in the calculation. I mean, this is totally wacky.
It is backwards from what you'd expect it to be right now. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And none of our dollars is stretching as far as it should. And Europe's technically in a recession still, but they're also having massive inflation at the same time. And China is trying to avoid deflation at this point. They missed their CPI numbers because in their case, growth is good because the consumer market helps all of us. A lot of U.S. businesses export to China and vice versa. And other major economies are kind of in the same boat we're in. But we've obviously and strangely managed it somewhat better. Places in Europe are still looking at inflation between 7 and 10%, depending what month you're looking at. Places like Turkey is well into double digits. Big parts of South America, like Brazil and Mexico, and Central America, still facing very high inflation rates for economies not as strong as U.S. and EU, and obviously tragedies and the horrors in the Middle East with Israeli, really Hamas. Let's call it Hamas conflict. Plus, you got the war in Ukraine and other instabilities around the world. We've talked about many times now. It does affect global energy markets, and I think Joe Biden, the president's talking about releasing some of the restrictions in Venezuela to try to open up more oil access here. And the U.S. is still one of the biggest producers of oil, but not all the oil is sold in the U.S. It's sold out of the U.S. too. It's contractual. It isn't like, an oil company decides tomorrow morning he's going to change his customers. I mean, these are all long contracts.
Yeah, it's going to present a real challenge for the Fed at their next meeting and what interest rates do for the future.
Well, the interest rate clearly is taking itself in the sense that, we're creeping into 8% zone on mortgages. And the market is all weird because it doesn't know what sector is interesting. I mean, you don't know if the utility energy sector versus, tech sector versus food versus retail, the whole thing is just inconsistent. And, the bond market's very strong. We talked about this in the past about savings accounts and rates, right? I mean, at some point, smaller banks are going to have a real issue because people are realizing their savings is not generating any kind of savings.
Right.
They're going to move their computer to electronically transfer someplace else their money, whether it be into another bank that's offering FDIC insured, very important, FDIC insured or equivalent if you're a credit union, bank, or they go into money market and treasuries and buy U.S. treasuries, which is the safest commodity on the planet. It's a U.S. treasury. So, I think, as we kind of continue on the path here on the fact that student loan debt forgiveness, suspension, whatever, from the feds has ended in October, we'll see the impacts of that in the data sets from October, November. We won't see those data sets to January. People are definitely slowing down buying cars and homes. Your credit card is $1 trillion debt collectively around the country. But consumer spending exceeded expectations by a very wide margin in the data sets this month, a very wide margin. But consumer confidence is really low. It's very strange.
It really is. I think that the pie has been sliced up in so many different little slivers. It's just hard to get an overall picture of what the economy is doing right now.
Well, yeah, because the Chicago Fed Reserve does consumer surveys every month. That's where the data comes from, and on a national level. And consumer confidence ain't that hot. It's like 63%. You want to be in like the 70s, low 80s. That's generally considered healthy, right? Consumer confidence getting to over 100 is very unusual because something's got to be really great to have that happen. But your consumer confidence is a 63, but your spending is exceeding expectations. And saving accounts are being dwindled, but apparently there's still enough money out there. So where's that money? So what I'm guessing happening is the bank data is not good for us anymore. So the banks report collectively all the data to the feds in terms of how much deposits there in their banks as a collective, and it gives us a clue as how much money collectively we all have. And obviously, if you're really wealthy, you have more than people that aren't, right? They make up the bulk of the savings. What I think is happening is people moved into the treasuries and money markets. Both people with a lot of means and also middle income and upper middle income folks most likely move their money into a non-bank account. That's why I say that small banks could be in deep, deep trouble, because if you don't have enough deposits, you can't pay your the interest on your depositors. And and since your loans that are outstanding out there is much lower, they're getting loans back at 2-3%. But if your expectation is to pay a CD or checking account at minimum 4%, you're only getting back 2 or 3% interest on your loans, and no one's buying new loans because you have to give them out at 7-8%.
Right.
Yeah, you guys can see the problem, right? Because your interest rates are tied to the loans that are issued by the bank, because they get a cut of the action on the loan return. But for so long, interest rates are so low, the banks can maintain higher margins on the return on investment. This is not just Bank of America. This is little banks and credit unions at home too. So generally, smaller banks are very low risk averse. They won't give loans unless they have incredible credit and amount of your ability to pay back. But also limits the size of the pool of those issued loans, which limits the size of your depositors.
Right. Yeah.
So you don't have a lot of depositors, you can't give a lot of loans.
It's really simple. You can't have more going out than is coming in and stay solvent. Yeah.
So I really think unless something changes or these smaller banks come up with something soon, first half of 2024 could be a real crisis for small banks and credit unions.
Yeah, there could be a lot more, mergers and consolidations like we saw in the past.
Agreed. That's when we saw that in 08 to 10, right? From 2008 to 2010, there was a lot of consolidations, mergers, as small banks couldn't keep up, and either a lot of small banks had to get together, or a mid-sized regional bank would come in and take them over.
Right.
Do I think it'd be a banking crisis in terms of like 2008, 2010? I don't think so. Do I think there'd be some distress in different parts of the country? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
But again, FDIC insured, folks. Make sure your stuff is FDIC insured. It's been proven already. It works. And don't keep more than $250,000 in one place per person.
Yeah, great advice. Absolutely. Can we talk a bit about the MBTA, Jackie?
Do I have to?
I knew I'd get that response from you. At some point in the future, there's going to be an announcement about a new Quincy Center station, supposedly today, but I'm guessing sometime soon. Is it funded? Has the state already provided funding? Do you know?
I don't know. This is the first of me hearing this press conference, so I have no idea what's going on.
Okay.
You know that the city of Quincy was designated a transportation bond bill many, many, many moons ago now as the master designer for Quincy Center T. I'm aware that doing the Quincy Center T station at a food development level could cost $1 billion of public money,
Really?
unless you have a public-private partnership. But even have a public-private partnership, I mean, building in or around rail is not easy. People unhappy with service disruptions. The last thing I want to hear is a development that even causes more service disruptions. Okay,
Right.
let's be frank, people. I mean, I'm already got enough anger coming my way on the current situation.
Oh, right.
I have no interest in more anger caused from disruptions from a development project. Obviously, mixed use makes no sense. I mean, so-called smart growth means you build things like you see at the Abbey, where you have private housing with some small commercial on the first floor to hopefully allow folks that starter apartments, essentially, public transit, people don't have, a lot of money to get to work easily. Unfortunately, Deval Patrick's idea, that's where this came from, didn't work. It created the opposite effect. What people used to want to live near the loud train tracks became more valuable property because people wanted to live close to public transit. And as a result, rents went up closer you got to public transit. Used to be my young days, if it's too loud, what am I paying for noise?
Well, right. We saw that along the old Colony line when they wanted to restart Greenbush.
Yeah. And everyone on the Orange Line, I'm still enough from when the Orange Line was an overpass.
That's right. Yeah.
It was not in the ground. I remember those the Orange Line rail. So, but rental prices, were not surprisingly tied to noise, and that's not the case anymore. So, I don't know what's going on. Hopefully, I find out what's going on at some point. I do represent the area as part of my district. I am very concerned about it. But the other one, other big issue that needs to be addressed right away, Quincy Center T, is the parking issue.
Yes, for sure. The garage is gone, so it's very limited now.
Yeah, and it puts a lot of stress in Braintree, Quincy Adams, Wallaston, North Quincy. So, I mean, whatever happens is going to need a substantial amount of parking and a safety traffic pattern associated with parking, and perhaps move the bus drop-off pickup spots as part of a new parking component to try to see if we can get better traffic pattern in that area as the downtown continues to develop. So, obviously, I would think my personal opinion is parking would be the first priority. You got to get that settled in first before you can do any kind of development. What's going to go around it? Because, obviously there are neighbors that live near there. I mean, people always don't want to park in the streets, but it's not like living in Wallaston where you can do a lot of residential parking and try to go to the T.
Yeah, it's more in a neighborhood there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then, once determining what the parking is regarding public transit access parking, will hopefully drive what the rest of the event will look like. But yeah, I mean, depending on the scope of the project, it could be $1 billion. And we talked about interest rates earlier, right? I don't know how it would work because the T has its own independent bonding from the state. They're not on my books, so to speak. The T's on its own books regarding bonds, so they don't affect the state's credit rating. They have their own. So, as we talked about $4 billion for housing right now, I suspect there'll be a capital improvement bond bill next year for public buildings, state-owned buildings, and then some maybe another transportation bond bill, maybe not. We'll see how far we get. And we do have a bond cap. The state does have a self-imposed limit on how much they can borrow per year. It's I think it's in the low 2 billions now. I keep losing track of these numbers. They're all tied to CPI. That's why, because I don't know what they keep changing on me. And then we also have an over bond cap statewide projects, which is basically also tied to CPI, and it's generally about $20 billion against a budget of close to $60 billion budget. So, we do have a lot of mechanisms. So we only can borrow so much ourselves. So a federal component is probably going to be required as well as private sector component.
Right. Okay. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. I don't have a better answer for you.
What's coming up later on this month we should know about?
There's my brother's church, Baptist church block party they're trying to put together this Saturday. Hopefully the rain doesn't deter them. Congratulations at Dan Hacker. He was Democrat of the Year. That was this past Sunday, so we said hi to that. I did get my notice from Marymount about more rain out, unfortunately. Opportunities, having a tough time with the neighbors getting together. What else is going on? Dove is later. I think Dove is this month. They have their.
It's Friday night, actually. Yep.
Yeah. So if we can't go to the fundraiser, please consider giving a couple of bucks to Dove. Domestic violence ended. It's our local domestic violence shelter. If you unable to attend, just drop a couple of bucks. They can use it for good causes as well. What else? I can't keep track. Like the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association in Chinatown had the 100-year anniversary party last night. Obviously, I couldn't go. I was in the State House in debate to the early evening. So, congratulations to a 100-year organization that's been serving Chinatown and the greater Chinese community. What else is going on? This guy's out lose track of everything.
The Quincy Symphony has a fall classical music concert on Sunday at Quincy High School, so that's something folks can enjoy regardless of the weather, which is kind of nice.
Indoor is good.
Yes.
And what else? Again, you guys all know I encourage vaccination. I think distribution system's starting to settle down. It takes a few weeks for it to activate. Heading to the indoor season, like the concert. I'll definitely consider, looking to do that. I'm vaccinated. My mom's been vaccinated. Especially my mom's poor health. It's crucial in my case. And if you're not comfortable, definitely consider masking up in contained areas. Because we're hitting that part of the year. It's not just COVID, folks. It's also the flu and the RSV.
Yep, that's right. You got it.
Yeah, I don't know too many letters, but I mean, also just generally speaking, the common cold and the flu is floating around. I mean, if you're not concerned about COVID, the flu has always been part of our lives. So, not just get a flu shot, but mask, hygiene, can reduce the possibility of getting the flu. Flu is equally miserable. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah, just if there's ways for you to keep from getting sick, why not do it?
Absolutely. They're strongly encouraged. So again, I mean, if you want to get vaccinated, I get it. I get what you're saying. I do encourage it. But mask, hygiene, keeping your distance, is also a way to help reduce the possibility of getting sick.
Yeah, exactly. All righty. Points of contact time, Techie.
Yeah, we're still in the office. 617-722-2370, 617-722-2370 is the phone number. You got Tackey, TACKEY.CHAN at mahouse.gov, TACKEY.CHAN at mahouse.gov. I have a Facebook account, State Representative Tackey Chan. We have the resource page at tackeychan.org. MALegislature.gov is the state website for the legislature, MALegislature.gov. Again, you want to track a bill down, you don't need to call me. You can find it there yourself. It is live updated at the same time my computer system internally is live updated. And you can watch our public hearings, maintain the fact that, the internet can see us. Although it was funny, we had a hearing on Monday and the microphones didn't work for the first time.
No.
Yes, the switchboard was having problems. We're talking dead air because I'm watching the screen as my co-chair is doing the hearing, and I'm looking at the screen tapping on the shoulder, I think we got a problem.
Oh.
So
technology, it's great when it works, but when it doesn't, it's frustrating.
Oh, it can be frustrating. I'm sure you all waited with bated breath to see me on the internet. But it was we need to stop this hearing for a second because we got to get this stuff fixed.
Yes.
And of course, QATV, Joe Calano, first thing in the morning, you can catch his podcast on the quick updates in Quincy News. And obviously, this podcast and YouTube and QA TV is a great place to see not necessarily just me, but local happenings, including things like the city council meetings and the mayor's race and another local leaders talking about important things to them in the neighborhoods that you all should know.
By the way, Kevin Coffin from the Montclair Wollaston Neighborhood Association wanted to give you a huge thank you for supporting their Pumpkin Spice Festival.
I hope it doesn't rain too hard on them.
Oh, they already had it. It went off fine.
Oh, did it? See, this is how bad my life has gotten. I can't keep track of anything.
So yeah, Kevin was very grateful for your support.
Oh, Kevin's an old friend. He's a very old friend. Again, one of my, digressing again, as we always do in the show, but my first real campaign I worked on was Kevin Coffin's School Committee race way back when.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, it was a small operation, but unfortunately we didn't get the result we wanted. But it was still, it was a lot of fun. And it was a very good education on a ground game based campaign. And before you had cell phones, before you had any kind of internet technology, before you had any of this data mining you do on the internet for campaigns, that was a very old-fashioned education. And I brought those things to my campaign in 210, a lot of those lessons, as well as many of the lessons on many other people's campaigns. And I still hold on to those lessons from 25 plus years ago on that first campaign. So, yeah.
It worked. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Techie.
You too. Take care. I'll see you in a week's time.